One interest was psychology. The other interest while growing up was for me was advertising for the campus placements. They said, look, first 5 years, all you're going to be doing is getting coffee for your creative directors and typically
I agree.
and then eventually RSPL offered me the role of a CEO to run their business.
Basically, the transformation first of the mindset has to be in the top leadership. Welcome to the Payal Nanjiani Leadership Podcast. This is your host, Payal Nanjiani, and each week we bring you an inspiring thought leader from around the world to help you unlock the success within you and for you to become a great leader. Thanks for joining me on here today. And today we have in the studio none other than Manish Makhijani, the CEO at RSPL Group. Now, Manish brings a wealth of expertise in business strategy, consumer insights, and marketing. And he has nearly 2 decades of Unilever experience where he has played a key role in driving strategic growth alongside experience at Starcom and Blue Star Limited. And he joins us today on the Payal Nanjiani Leadership Podcast to talk about how to bring mindset change in organizations. Manish, welcome to the podcast. It's such an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you, Payal. Thank you so much for inviting me. The pleasure is all mine.
Great. So before we dig in deep into this mindset change and how you have been doing this, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you land up at a C-suite level? What does the journey look like?
Well, it's been a long journey, but doesn't feel like long at all. So, like to say, if you're enjoying your job and if you're having fun, then time passes very quickly.
Mhm.
So my journey started from very different place from where I am today. So I started by doing my engineering after my high school, etc. And at that time, engineering, medical were only choices if you were academically inclined and did well in your grades, etc. So I did my engineering, and I worked as an engineer at Blue Star after a year or so, for a year or so after my engineering. But interestingly, what happened was that when I was growing up, my dad was a psychology and a philosophy teacher. Used to teach psychology and philosophy in a college,
Okay.
and I read lots of books of psychology, and I've heard him talk about it, and I've heard him talk about philosophy and psychology, and I was extremely interested in human psychology as a result because it was sort of all around me while growing up. Um, but I wanted to be a psychiatrist, but at that time, if you wanted to be a psychiatrist, you had to be a doctor first and then specialize in
Yeah.
psychiatry
It's the same
and
now.
medicine. Yeah, it's the same now, except that now you have psychologists and you have
Yeah.
counselors. Don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to be doctors.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the case at that point in time. So and I wasn't interested in medical at all. So engineering was the only option, and I did that. But after I finished my engineering and I started working, I realized it wasn't my cup of tea. I wasn't enjoying it at all. So,
Okay.
which is the one thing that when you do something graduation in, and you might land up doing something entirely different, as long as you figure out at some point what is it that you want to do. So, and one interest was psychology. The other interest while growing up was for me was advertising. I used to watch lots and lots of ads on Doordarshan, the Indian national television channel,
Yeah.
which is the government run at that point in time in India. And I used to look at a lot of ads and I used to say, oh, this ad is so interesting. Oh, that ad is so bad. And I used to think that Doordarshan made those ads for the brands. But clearly that was not the case. I learned that much later. And I started thinking, why is it that they're making some ads which are very interesting, some ads are not? And then it occurred to me, maybe it's what the brand tells them to make. So it's the importance of briefing, that was sort of, I realized even at that point in time. Anyway, so after I didn't like my engineering job and I didn't know what to do, I thought, why not go to advertising? That seems like a fascinating field. And you're also using human psychology to understand, what do consumers want? What should you talk to them about in advertising? So advertising seemed like an interesting field. Uh, so while doing my job at Blue Star, the Blue Star would have hated to know at that point, I called up an ad agency and I said, I want a job. So they said, what can you do? I said, I'm very creative. I love looking at advertising. I love reading poetry and all of that. So I'm very creative. So they said, okay, we'll give you a job, but can you draw? So I said, no, I can't. He said, do you write stories or poetry? I said, no, I don't. So he said, they said that, you're creative, then what sort of creativity do you have?
Yeah.
Anyway, so they pointed saying, we can take you in client servicing, who's the person between, since you're interested and passionate about advertising, client servicing in between the client and the creative. So you can do that, but we need an MBA for that. Until that point, I wasn't thinking seriously about MBA or B school at all. But that sort of said, okay, maybe if I want to be in advertising, if they want, MBA, if I don't have any creative skills to show, then I will do an MBA. So I went to a B school and I went to one of the leading B schools at that point in time. But I chose a B school where there were a lot of ad agencies coming for recruitment as well. So not just the, one of the top 10 ones, but also where advertising agencies were coming. So I went there with an intention of going to advertising. And I loved my 2 years at B school. I learned a lot and enjoyed it a lot more than my engineering. And I was obviously more inclined towards marketing and the world of advertising. But I didn't land up joining advertising because when I spoke to the seniors before the campus placements, they said, look, first 5 years, all you're going to be doing is getting coffee for your creative directors and getting
I
coffee.
agree. I
Yeah,
guess I resonate with that. You know why? Because my daughter is in the same field as
right.
you are.
Yeah. So they said that, you'll be working till 4 in the morning, editing presentation for the client, getting coffee for them, organizing events.
Yeah,
So if you want to join advertising, join after 5, 6 years of experience because then you will join at least a little higher level. So don't join advertising now. So I was quite disillusioned. And then I thought that research, consumer insights is a great field because it's a good combination of
yeah,
marketing, consumer insights, and statistics. And statistics is something I was, good at being an engineer, analytical background, and so on. So I thought research is a great field for me to go because it's a combination of three things. So I consciously pursued research companies on campus, going after that because by then I had a lot more clarity saying, okay, this is what I want to do. So I went in research and I worked in research agencies for a few years, learning the ropes on, how do you understand consumers, what are the different methods and so on. And after about 4, 5 years, I did go to an advertising agency. I worked in an advertising agency, which is where Starcom, which is a Leo Burnett's agency. And I chose media because I thought media is closer to being
yeah.
analytical, media planning, media strategy. Um, but the experience was exactly what my seniors had told me. So it was quite repetitive, and you're doing a lot of things repeatedly, and you're sort of trying to get the clients to convince clients to sort of buy your media plan and so on. So I decided, no, that was not for me. I was enjoying Insight a lot more. So I went back to Insights. And then I joined Unilever after about 7, 8 years in different agencies and companies.
Okay.
Unilever, I spent about 20 years, about 2 decades, working in different parts of Unilever on different businesses, starting with India specific focus on one category. Then I worked in Bangkok, then I worked in Singapore, then I worked in London. About 10 years living abroad, working in different categories on different brands at local, global, and regional roles. Um, so, for example, when I was in London, I was head of insights for the foods category globally. And foods is a very,
Okay.
very big part of liver globally. It's about 45, 50% of the business. India is very small, but globally it's very big. So, one of the largest categories, I was global head of insights for them, working with the head of the business, trying to figure out how do we grow the business? What do we need to do? How do we do innovations? How do we differentiate ourselves from competition and so on? And then I came back to India as head of insights and analytics for Hindustan Unilever. And then I worked on that for a few years across categories in Unilever and so on. So that's been my journey. And then, at some point I thought, okay, now I've done enough of, jobs at Unilever in different categories. I worked on all categories and brands, etc. So then I left and I started consulting on my own. And for about two odd years, I consulted on my own different clients, doing all kinds of marketing assignments, from developing, the brand identity to communication to performance marketing to identifying strategies for variants and so on and so forth. And then eventually RSPL offered me the role of a CEO to run their business and grow them. So that's where I am right now.
Fabulous. I
So
mean,
it's
you
been my
said
journey.
that.
Like I said, we started from one place, came to a completely different place.
Yeah. I mean, it is so unconventional, you know. I mean, an engineer and then getting into ads and then getting into FMCG, such an unconventional journey. And no wonder, you know, when I spoke with you and you said, you know, no, Payal, one of the topics that really resonates with me is how to bring mindset change because you yourself have that mindset of change. You know, I didn't, from what I heard from you, there was no fear. You know, you were exploring and you wanted to do more different things and reach where you have reached. So I don't think you ever had that thing that I want to become a CEO, or did it just happen?
No, I never had that. I mean, when you're in B school, you're thinking, okay, you're going to be CEO one day. But when I was by the time I came to second year and started campus placements, I said, no, I want to do consumer insights because I like that. Whether I
Hmm.
become a CEO or not was not the goal at all.
Okay.
So I think trying to find out what you're passionate about, what excites you, and when you get up in the morning and go to work,
Hmm.
is that something that you look forward to? Is very, very important, and that was important to me. And because I worked as an engineer and I didn't enjoy that job, I wanted to take up something that I really enjoy. You don't want to get depressed from Sunday evening onwards because next
Yeah.
day is Monday.
I know.
Uh, so I think consumer insights is something I really like. And, advertising is fascinating. What do you advertise? What do you talk about? How do you decide what do you want to talk to consumers about? How do you decide the pricing of a brand? How do you decide, what the product quality should be? That's
Mm.
an interesting field to be. So if you're in consumer insights, then, you get to decide, you get to sort of put those points of view on the table. And I think, fortunately, Unilever is a company where the brand team, brand manager, and the insights manager work like two sides of the same coin.
Ah.
So, I mean, you can't have, if you don't have insights about the consumers, you can't run a brand. Equally, if you're an insights manager, if you don't know what the brand is about, you can't give the right insights.
True.
So you get very, very good exposure to both the sides quite well in companies like those.
Okay. So there are two things running on my mind right now. One is a couple of times you mentioned about the consumers and how your attention is
Yeah.
on the consumer. And early on, we had spoken about where you mentioned something like the thought of bringing the consumer into the boardroom. What does that mean?
Yeah. So I think every company thinks they're consumer centric. And I'm using the word consumer and customer interchangeably, though in
Mm,
FMCG word it means two different things, but
mm,
for a lot of companies it means one and the same thing. So I'm using the word interchangeably, but every company thinks they're consumer centric. But in my experience, before I joined Unilever and after Unilever, when I've been consulting different clients, that's not necessarily the case.
mm,
So, for instance, I'll give you an example, which is one of my pet peeves: is a bank. When you go to the banks think they're extremely customer centric, but they're not necessarily.
mm,
So you walk into a bank and you have to wait in the queue, and you go to one counter and they'll tell you, "Oh, you want your credit card is a problem. This is not the right counter. Go to that counter." Now, why can't you mark out very clearly saying this is a credit card counter, this is that counter, etc.
ah,
Um, uh, and I was talking to one of the banks, a couple of years back, and they think that they have a person standing at the door who's guiding customers saying, "Oh, you have a credit card problem, go to that counter. You have a home loan thing, go to that counter."
mhm.
And you go to that counter, the person tells you, "No, this is not a credit card counter." So the person standing there actually doesn't know. They're just meant to sort of disperse the crowd and make sure there is no crowd hanging around at the entrance. They've got a place to sit. But they're not actually guiding you to the right place. So that's not customer centricity at all.
Right.
And when you talk to a bank, the employees typically sitting down at a desk, looking at their computer, etc. You're
Yeah,
standing. Make the
absolutely.
customer stand. You're not treating them equally, right? And if you're
Right.
standing, the person is sitting behind the counter, say, "Man, can you please do this, sir? Can you please do that?" But automatically they're putting you to a lower position.
Ah,
And then they take your bill or whatever, and they're busy looking at the computer for 10 minutes, and you don't know
mhm.
whether they are processing your query, they're doing something
Correct,
else, they're
correct.
checking.
Yeah.
You have no idea. And the computer is not turned towards you. Now,
Hmm.
if you make, when I was talking to one of the banks, they changed it and they made sure that the customer is sitting and is at the same eye level as the executive serving them, and that you can also see the screen to see whether they're processing your bill or not. Now, that one small difference immediately makes customers feel that, yeah, you care about me. You're actually processing my query, and you're talking to me as with an eye contact.
Hmm.
So that's customer centricity. And I think, therefore, if you want to make that change, you have to talk to people at the boardroom saying, "Look, these changes need to be done because they make a huge difference in our customer satisfaction."
Hmm.
And by bringing customer to the boardroom is to say that people who are the decision makers, can you bring the right consumer insights or customer insights to them so that they can make sometimes small changes and sometimes big changes to make sure that you've understood what the customers want and you've
Right.
done your process or product changes accordingly.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I've never heard that phrase that you bring the consumer to the boardroom, which just means that you think from their perspective and how they are, taking this ahead. And when it comes to Unilever, you also
Yeah.
mentioned about, how you had the changes and everything done in the organization. What was that looking like?
So it was a long journey, and there were people who my seniors when I joined, for example, they have contributed massively. So it wasn't a single person change in that sense. But um, initially, long time ago, it used to be the consumer insights team used to be like a market research department in the company.
Okay.
So you want to get research, you want to test a product to see whether it's good for us to launch, or you want to test your advertising, you want to test an idea. You
Mm.
call the research team, give them the brief, they will get research done and come and tell you, yeah, your product is good, or your advertising is not good, or your pricing is too expensive, whatever the case may be. And the marketing team will go and implement that. So that's the stage one of, in my view, of consumer centricity. That's where we were. And
Mm.
we evolved that over a period of time. So, for instance, we said, the research person who's taking the brief from the marketing should understand saying, why are you doing this product testing? For instance, why do you want to introduce this? Have you identified a need gap? And what is the need gap? If you haven't identified, can we first understand, is there a need gap in the market? Is why you want to introduce a new product? So you try and understand that, shape the brief as well, and not just sort of be an order taker who's taking the order of research and just getting it delivered.
Mm.
So you start shaping the briefs as well. So you evolve a little bit more, and you evolve further from that, where you start having a conversation and strategy, saying what is our new product development strategy? What kind of new products are we going to launch? Why are we going to launch that? How is the business going to grow from existing one? So that you understand what the business is aiming for and plan for insights that they need in order to fuel the growth.
Mm.
Then you're moving along further. And then you move along furthermore, and you become not just insights provider, but you also become foresight providers. You start looking at consumer trends and technology trends and what's going to come. So, for example, in India, what's going to be next in laundry? What's going to be next in makeup? Can I
Okay.
predict that? Can I look at what's happening in London Fashion Week, for example, or Paris Fashion Week, and say when is that going to come to India? So, what should Lakme be doing? Can I predict that, and can I apply analytics to that? Can I apply some
Wow.
consumer
Okay.
data to that, so that you can plan for it. So therefore, from being an order taker of briefs, go get the research done, to being a foresight planner, it's an evolution. And that's an evolution we've gone through in Unilever. And that's an evolution that I've been helping other clients after I left Unilever to say that that's a mindset shift. Unless the CEO and the leadership team in the boardroom buys into that, that's not going to
Mm.
happen.
Mm.
So, you need to recruit the right people and insights. You need to have the right mindset and marketing teams. You need to have the
Okay.
right processes and tools and systems to do
Okay.
that evolution over a period of time. And it took us a long time, but the commitment of the leadership team has to be there for it to grow. That makes
Absolutely.
sense.
So you have so much decades of experience. You have worked with so many companies. In your opinion, what have you seen? Why do organizations struggle with the mindset transformation that they need to bring? And first of all, let me just go a little behind. When we talk about mindset transformation, does it start organization? Is it the leaders? Is it top down? What does it look like?
So, interesting question. I don't think there is one simple answer to that. There are nuances to that. So, when an organization realizes that they've grown to a certain point, and
Mhm.
if they want to grow further, when
Mm.
they realize that what has got us here is not going to take us further,
Yeah.
is when they realize I need to do that mindset. Now, that realization typically would come from the top down, to say that, okay, it's not going to get us there, so therefore what do we need to do and what do we need to change?
Mm.
So often, yes, it is top down. It's driven by the CEO or the boardroom or the leadership team, etc., or whoever is running the company, to say we need to change.
Mm.
It's very difficult for people who are at the ground levels, etc., below leadership team N-1, N-2, etc., to bring about that change necessarily, though they can talk about it. But it's a leadership team which has to say that, okay, we need to do things differently now. But
Mm.
then there's a lot of confusion saying, what do we need to do differently? So, for example, in FMCG space, there are lots and
Yeah.
lots of D2C brands now, right? So there are legacy companies like Unilever and P&G and L'Oreal, but there are D2C brands which are selling directly to consumers through their websites or through e-com platform. They don't have a physical infrastructure, of sales and distribution. Now, companies like Unilever and L'Oreal and P&G have to say, okay, do I need to shift my entire business to D2C because that's doing very well? Or
Mm.
do I continue doing what I'm doing the legacy way? Or do I do part of legacy, part of D2C? What do I need to change is what they need to decide. And if they say that, okay, I'm going to continue legacy way, plus I will do some new D2C stuff, then they don't have the skills to do that. So you need to bring the skills, and the mindset required for doing a brand D2C only on e-com, only on digital, is very different, because the pace is very fast, and you need to make the changes very fast. The kind of creatives you need is fast. So performance marketing is a very different ball game than brand building. So they need to bring those skills, and they need to have the mindset and say, okay, I need to build those skills now. It's an additional muscle that I
Mm.
don't have, and I need to build that muscle. So unless the leadership team is committed towards it, saying, I need that shift, they will bring that shift. And they will start the right resources, they will bring the right competencies to
And
start their mindset.
I liked what you said, which was you need to know what type of transformation you want to bring. You need to know what you're planning to go and do ahead of time. What types of innovation, what vision are you seeing, rather than just
Yeah.
sitting and saying, "Oh, we need to bring some transformation." But a lot
Yeah.
of organizations struggle to bring that transformation in their organization and amongst their people. Why does that happen?
So I think one is that, I mean, it's a combination of reasons, but in my view, one is that if you look at the leadership team is the one that has made the company successful. Typically, a lot of them have been there, for several years, who have brought the company to the certain stage.
Yeah.
For them to accept that, to take us to double the business, for example, or to grow, continue growing at the same level, whatever we've done so far is not going to help necessarily. We need new muscles. For them
Mm.
to accept that is not very easy because they've seen success. They've done things to make the business successful. So to realize that, whatever has made me successful is not going to make me successful is not very easy. It's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
So they
True.
need to therefore say, okay, I don't know how to do digital anymore. For instance, in the digital example, I don't know how to do that anymore. Let me get somebody else. But it's not just about bringing people who
Mm.
understand digital marketing. It's about saying
Yeah.
the perspective is very different on the way you do digital. So how are we going to do things differently? How are we going to make the decisions differently, etc. So I think they struggle with that because they've seen success in the past and it's very difficult to accept. Which is why if you bring in the new CEO or if you bring in, two, three people different in the leadership team who come from outside and bring that fresh perspective, then they can be the catalyst to
Mm.
bring about that change. Hey,
Right.
let's look at this differently. Or, often do little experiments saying, okay, let's experiment with this and see how it goes. We don't need to change the entire business, but let's put some seeds and we see the green shoots, then we can start sort of, growing them further.
Mm.
So I think that's what they struggle with the most in my view.
So that means basically the transformation first of the mindset has to be in the top leadership.
Absolutely.
Right. So, and I think that's
Absolutely.
where many people struggle, like you said, they feel we have had this success for so many years. What, if we change, will it be the same? And all of that consumes them. So, a lot of leaders have this difficulty. What are some of the things that they can do? What are some of the tips that you would give where not just senior leaders, but just anyone can have a change mindset, can be flexible when it comes to change and making that transformation mindset? What are some of the tips that we should follow?
Okay, so I think a few things in my view. One is that if you put consumer at the center and heart of the business, then it becomes about what do consumers want and what do I do for them that's
Yeah.
best for them. So then it's very easy to, then it becomes easier to detach saying, I want to manufacture the products in this way. And because that has been good for us and that's been profitable for us, etc.
Mm.
And that
Um,
just works for us. My expertise is making the products this way, distributing the products this
but
way.
what do the
It becomes
consumers?
easier to detach. Consumers want that way. So consumers today want 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, you want Zepto to deliver you the
Yeah.
product. So she wants that now. So if she wants that, then me as a manufacturer, how do I deliver that? So I start thinking, how do I deliver that?
So let me just ask you something here before we move ahead. Um, how easy is it or how difficult is it to actually know what the consumer wants in your industry, in any industry?
So it's not very difficult. But there are two, three things that need to be in place. One is that I think we need to have intimate knowledge about how people actually use the category, right? So I need to. So if I'm working on a dishwash, for example, I need to be washing the utensils myself
Hmm.
to know what struggle in washing the utensils, right?
Hmm.
Otherwise, I wouldn't know when she's saying that
Yeah.
it's not removing. Let's say when you cook meat in some vessels and the smell is not going. Why is it not going? How much of smell remains? How much is the struggle to get the smell out of the vessels? I wouldn't know if I haven't done it myself. So you need
True.
to have an intimate knowledge of how the product is used. And often in FMCG, it's easier because we're also the consumers of FMCG products. So
Hmm.
it's relatively easy. But if you're not washing dishes, then you must wash dishes. If you're not washing clothes, you must wash clothes.
Hmm.
Toilet cleaning, you must wash your own toilet. You must go watch consumers washing toilets,
Hmm.
and see what's the struggle they're having. So
Hmm.
intimate knowledge of how the product is used is important. And that again is a mindset that needs to be inculcated, saying use the product, use the product. If I'm a brand manager of Glow and Lovely, for example, which is a very, very mass brand, am I using Shiseido and Lancome for myself? Or am I using Glow and Lovely? If I'm not using Glow and Lovely, then I don't even know how good or bad the product is because I
Yeah.
think it's not only Shiseido is for me because I can afford that.
Right.
I'm a brand manager at so and so company. So that is one. So and I'll give you another example. When I work on sanitary napkins, my biology doesn't require me to use sand napkins, and I
Huh.
know enough about them, my wife, sisters, etc.
Huh.
But I don't have an intimate knowledge. What does absorption mean? What is the length of the pad? What difference does it make? How does it? How do you use it? How do you change it? How do you know it's time to change? I
Right.
don't know that. But I need to talk to enough consumers to say
To
what actually
know.
is a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one is that, and for that you don't need anything. You need to spend time with consumers, and it's not about reading research reports and presentations. I
Mm.
mean, you can do enough of that, but go talk to some consumers. Go say them use the product yourself. Go see how they're using. Go see how they are using the product category. So
Mm.
that's one part. Second part of it is that there is a lot of science that goes in consumer understanding, right? So if you're not using the right methodology, for example, then you might get completely wrong results. So that's something you need to leave to the experts. So if you're doing a product testing, what's the right way of doing product testing? If you're doing advertising testing, what's the right way of checking your ad before you launch it on air? So there's a science part of you need to leave that to expert, but you need to understand saying when the results come, how do I interpret them?
Correct.
So that's the second part of it, which is bringing the right method. Third is access to lots and lots of information, which I find shocking in lots and lots of organizations. Before Unilever and after Unilever, when I was consulting, is that very few people have access to information. Now, an insight comes when you're connecting the dots. You see that, for example, floor cleaner penetration is only 10% in North India. Only 10% people use branded floor cleaners in North India. Now, that's one data point you've got from one source. When you go and talk to people, every woman that you speak to, in a consumer connect, for instance, she say, "Oh, I like to keep my house very clean. I don't like the dirt at all." And you look behind the sofa and you see a little bit of dirt there. You see that surfaces, shelves are not as clean. They looking a little dusty. So why is it that she's saying that, I want to keep my house clean, but actually there's a lot of dust in her house? Why is it a contradiction to what she's saying versus what the actual house is? And then you go and see that my brand market share is XYZ, or my brand share is high or low and I've declined. Now, these are different data points. You need to connect the several data points and say, oh, this is the reason why she's actually not using a floor cleaner, branded floor cleaner. And this is what I can talk to her about for her to start using. For that, you need access to information. So the information systems, access to information, different data points, so that you can connect the dots, I think is very, very critical. So
Okay.
these are the things that an organization needs to go through to become
Mm.
consumer centric in a way, and to have a
Okay.
different mindset to say, how do I connect, how do I sort of make the decisions based on what consumers want? And like I said earlier, if you become consumer centric, then it's not about you. What do I want? What
Correct.
technology do I want from?
What
It's
they
about saying
want.
what does the consumer want. She
Mm.
wants a product in 10 minutes, so how do I make sure I get her that? It
And
becomes about her, not about
it's
yourself.
such a perspective change, that you're speaking about. And now when we are having this conversation, I remember you had spoken something earlier about the Great Indian Kitchen movie, something of that we
Yeah.
had discussed. What is
Yeah.
that?
So taking the same dishwash example, if you're selling a dishwash brand, let's say if you're brand manager on Vim, or if you're brand manager on Expert or EXO, um, one, like I was saying, you must wash utensils yourself regularly to see what the product efficacies are. And you must talk to people, watch them washing dishes. Like we go to consumers' houses at Unilever or a current company, you go to consumers or watch them wash the dishes. And when you go to consumers' houses, you realize that most of the houses in India are pretty modest. They're quite small. They don't have the kind of luxuries. So it'll be a small kitchen, and the small kitchen she has you know a wash basin full of
Mm.
utensils that she needs to clean. So just the emotional burden of, oh God, now dinner is over. Everybody is now after dinner. Everybody's going to sit watch TV or chat, and I have to sit and wash my utensils. That's a big emotional burden, and then
Yeah,
she has to
yeah.
wash. So only when you see her doing that is when it hits you saying, what's the emotional burden of washing utensils? It's not just about the lather that your product produces or whatever. But equally, there are things in popular culture that you can tap into, because there's a limitation to the number of people you can go to houses and watch them washing utensils. So the Great Indian Kitchen is a Malayalam movie which is primarily focused on the burden on the woman on washing utensils. So it has long shots of she washing utensils and how the wash basin gets clogged. And she tells her husband saying, call the plumber, but he forgets about it. Husband and father-in-law forget about it because they're busy. They have no idea what's she going through. And then how she has to clean the whole thing herself, and then she's cleaning the utensils. So the movie is focused on the burden in the kitchen. And it's called the Great Indian Kitchen
Mm.
to say, so what's the woman actually going through in the kitchen. And then
Yeah.
you realize that the difficulty is not just about physical act of washing utensils, it's the emotional burden.
Mm.
And you watch that as a utensil cleaner brand, and you say, oh, that's not something that any research report will tell you, but the movie is telling you, in a good way. Unfortunately, the Hindi version of that movie they remade wasn't as good. It
Okay.
focused on things altogether, but the Malayalam movie was great. So, what is it that, so there are movies or popular culture that you can tap into to get some consumer insights. It's not just about doing the surveys or doing the qualitative research and getting the insights. It's connecting the dots through various sources that finally gets you a right insight.
Wow. Because I remember that when we had spoken, and I found it very interesting. And I said, our audience should hear this. It was so interesting. So, Manish, you are a powerhouse of expertise and insights. But as we come to the closure of this podcast, what is your one piece of advice that you would like to give to the audience?
Um, I think it's probably the most difficult question you've asked me, but I would say that we must understand that the people that we are serving as a business, right, the consumers or the customers you're serving, are also human beings. So, and they're human beings like you and me. So, if you stop referring to them as consumers but refer to them as people, then suddenly who they are, their whole life, what is their life about, their aspirations, their desires, their anxieties become real to you. And the brands and the categories don't matter in their minds at all. They matter a lot more to us as companies, but to them it don't. But if you understand them as people, as full human beings, then the role that a small brand like yours, a dishwash brand or a detergent brand or a soap or or a lipstick can play can become a lot more
Yeah.
real. So the only advice I would say is that just talk to people and connect with them as people. Just like socially, if you go
Yeah.
to an event, social event where you don't know too many people, you'll just be polite and have conversation and get to understand them, tell them about you. Just use it like that and get to understand them as people. And I think that gives you such a different and fresh perspective, which no market research can give you. And then it doesn't become a boring market research, which is driven by technique and statistics. It's just understanding them as people. So my one advice to be, whether you're a fresher starting off fresh, or whether you have 30 years of experience, whether you're CEO, whether you are a assistant manager, just talk to people. Just tap into your curiosity. Just talk to people as people, understand them in their entirety, and then see what you want to do. And related to that, there are other things like if you're in FMCG, for instance, go shop yourself. Go to the physical kirana shop and shop.
Yeah.
That's the biggest place you learn marketing. Go to the shop every month, see what people are buying, see what's on display, what price discount is being given, what's the retailer giving you. So the more you engage with people in real life, whether it's that's a shop, whether it's at their homes, whether it's social meeting, the more you understand them and your brands become a lot more real rather than sitting in a guitar and listening to presentations.
Yeah, no, I think this is absolutely great. And when you said like, don't take it that consumers, take them as human beings, as people. So, when I had written my very first book in 2017, which is Success is Within, in that I had written, we are not just human doings, we are human beings. And that's what we need to
Right.
bring into leadership. So I so resonate with that. But thank you so much, Manish, for being on this podcast and giving your time. I can literally imagine your day and how you've taken the time to come here. So that's really an honor. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. And this one's for our listeners. This is Manish Makhijani and Payal Nanjiani wishing you loads of success in your career life. God bless.